Hi and welcome to the channel. Today we will build another SFF PC using this Metalfish T60. I bought this without the riser for 2,049 pesos or around $35 which is overall pretty cheap. Adding a required Metalfish riser will cost you 1,829 pesos, bringing a potential total of 3,878 pesos or $65, which is again still pretty cheap. As for the specs, it can fit an ITX motherboard, a 60mm cooler, 310 by 50 by 130mm GPU, but the height can be up to 150mm. You can do this by rerouting the extension cable to the motherboard side of the case to have a better GPU height compatibility. I didn't test this, but it is interesting to know. For PSU, it is up to SFXL power supply. It has mounts for two 120mm fans and has a total volume of 9.7 liters. The box when I received it was pretty much damaged, and upon opening the box, you'd see the accessory box. The case is padded by foam padding and enclosed in a plastic bag. Sadly, I discovered that the side panels has cracks already. Anyway, inside the accessory box is a QC card, a bunch of zip ties, PSU screws and standoffs, GPU baffle cover, packaged screws, handle, and PCIe slot covers. There is no screwdriver this time around, which is kind of weird, and this is a typical sandwich style case. It has an inverted motherboard, an upright GPU on the other side, and a power extension at the top. The front is just solid. At the top, there is a power button, audio jacks, USB 2, and USB 3. To open the case, you need to unscrew 4 screws on each side. At this point, I want to remove the film to see the actual damage, and also to remove the static electricity early on. This is a learning that I got while building on the Metalfish T40. Anyway, initially there are 3 hairline cracks, but there are some more here. On the motherboard side, you'd see the cables. There's a power extension cable, USB 3, power switch and power LED, audio jack, and USB 2. Looking at the dust filter, it is secured probably by a dual-sided tape. The bottom part also has pre-installed dust filters. Moving on with the build, I tried to remove the PSU bracket first, which is secured by 3 screws. As you can see, the top part can be fitted by 2 thick 120mm fans, and at this point I also tried if the riser will fit, and well, it should, and it did. As for the components, as usual I'll be using the B550i Aorus Pro AX as the motherboard. The processor is a Ryzen 7 5800X, RAM is a Kingston Fury non-RGB 32GB 3200MHz CL16 RAM. And also as usual, I pre-installed the 8-pin CPU power connector as it is hard to reach. And as for the cooler, I used the Alpenfohn Black Ridge cooler, which will have a 120mm slim fan at the top that will also be plugged to the motherboard. The total height is 62mm, which means that there will be a bulge. The next thing I tried was to plug the audio front panel as it will be hard to reach as well. However, I have doubts with the default placing of the cables as it will be covered by the PSU. With that, I tried to route some of the cables in the small hole together with the power extension cable. And the USB 3, which won't fit in the hole, was routed above the spine. I then plug the front panel audio and USB 2, and then screw the motherboard to the case. As for the PSU, I'll be using the FSP Dagger Pro 850W gold power supply. I've also pre-plugged the power cables that I needed. Screw the PSU to the bracket, plug the power extension, and turn on the PSU. Plug the CPU power connector. At this point, I realized that I need to plug the power switch and LED to the motherboard as it will be hard to reach once I install the PSU. I then also plug the Y splitter to the motherboard and then plug the fans to the Y splitter. I also plug the 24-pin power connector to the motherboard as well. Plug the USB 3, screw the PSU bracket to the case, route the PCIe cables to the other side, and at this point it is time to install the GPU. I tried to fit in a longer GPU like the Sapphire Nitro Plus RX 6800, but it doesn't fit. Given that, my biggest GPU that I have that can fit is the Gigabyte Gaming OC RTX 3060. Plug the PCIe power connector to the GPU, plug the GPU to the PCIe riser. At this point, I noticed that I forgot the handle again. Screw the GPU baffle to the case, screw the riser to the case. I also tuck the excess cables underneath the GPU, and then plug the riser to the motherboard. As there are lots of excess cables, feel free to tie them together. Screw the side panels to the case, and lastly, screw the GPU baffle cover to the case. and the build is done. As for testing, I tested this in 3 configs only, with 2 fans in exhaust config, with 1 fan in exhaust config, and with no fans at all. As for the temps, while benchmarking Cinebench R23 for 30 minutes, the CPU temps hovered at 90 degrees Celsius, which is as always expected. The GPU fans didn't spin at all with the 2 exhaust fans, but while with a single exhaust fan, the GPU fans spin 6 times at the latter half of the test. Without exhaust fans, the GPU fans spin 10 times, with one of each that took longer at the last quarter of the test. As for the temps, while benchmarking FFXV in 1440p for 30 minutes, with 2 exhaust fans, the CPU temps averaged at 69.76 degrees Celsius with a max temp of 77.4 degrees Celsius. With 1 exhaust fan, the CPU temps averaged at 70.23 degrees Celsius with a max temp of 79.5 degrees Celsius. With no exhaust fans, the CPU temps averaged at 71.91 degrees Celsius with a max temp of 82.3 degrees Celsius. As compared to the other cases, do note that this is not an apples to apples comparison, but this shows that the case performs decent even with no exhaust fans. As for the GPU temps, with 2 exhaust fans, it averaged at 69.52 degrees Celsius with a max temp of 71.3 degrees Celsius. With 1 exhaust fan, it averaged at 71.63 degrees Celsius with a max temp of 74 degrees Celsius. With no exhaust fans, it averaged at 73.34 degrees Celsius with a max temp of 75.1 degrees Celsius. As compared to the other cases, again this shows that the case performs decent even with no exhaust fans. As for the GPU hotspot and fan speeds, they were nothing worth noting as it just scaled linearly. Generally, I would recommend at least 1 exhaust fan for this case. Ideally, you'd want 2 fans, but your GPU may be too tall and may not have enough clearance for the power connectors. As for the dislikes to the case, first would be the soft packaging, as it damaged the side panels. Though nowadays they offer a mesh panel, which is interesting as well. Next is like the T40, that would be the lack of manual. To reiterate, I forgot the handle again, and the included standoffs doesn't make sense. As for buyer recommendations, I strongly suggest that you buy the Metalfish riser, as normal risers will not fit. Also, it is worth considering checking the mesh panel version. You may also try skipping the rerouting of the front panel connectors, as it might hit the fan blades. Overall, I have nothing much to say other than it is an okay case, given that it is very cheap and the performance is good. I was disheartened that my side panels cracked, but that's another topic, and your mileage may vary with your courier. Anyway, that's it for this video. Do let me know in the comments below on what you think of this case. Thanks for watching. Do like or dislike and subscribe for more unboxing, SFF builds, and benchmarks. Bye!